In this video, I'm going to answer some questions that I asked to be sent to me on the Goalie Strength Instagram page. So these are questions that other goalies and goalie fans had, and I will be answering these questions, so it will be a goalie Q&A. So let's get right into this video with the first question. So the first question was, what is the biggest thing to remember in net? And my answer to that is, I think the less time you spend thinking about what you should be doing in net, in games at least, the better. Hockey, any sport really should be it really should come down to your instinct. You shouldn't be thinking, I need to do this, then that, then this. That slows you down. You get in your own head. What I would recommend you do instead is spend that time when you're thinking about remembering something, spend that time doing that in practice. So in practice, you should be thinking, okay, remember this cue, or remember this, or I want to focus on these two things for this practice. In games, you shouldn't be thinking that. You shouldn't think that there's like a certain thing you have to remember all game. You shouldn't think, okay, I've got to look over here, make sure I keep my head down. Okay, what are my feet doing? Are my hands in the right position? Like, these are things that should come to you naturally in a game. You should just be in the moment. You should be in kind of a flow state rather than thinking methodically step by step. So that's in games. In practices, definitely you should be thinking, and I always recommend that in practice you should go in with 1 to 2 things that you're focusing on. So it could be like, I'm going to focus today on puck tracking, so I'm going to turn my head to follow every single shot into my equipment or into the net or the boards behind me. Whereas in a game, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be thinking that way. So practice is when you think. It's when you really focus on doing the steps right and improving your goaltending. And then in games, you just play, you just let it go. You're more natural and you just play and compete. That's if the question was being asked in regards to that. There could be a different type of question being asked here, which is the biggest thing to remember in net as what's important for goalies. So I would say in general, it's the fundamentals. Like, everybody might have a different thing that they need to remember, that they need to focus on, that they need to think about when it comes to goaltending. But for the general goalie, fundamentals are key. Like, if you're not a great skater, if you're not great at positioning, you need to get these things nailed. Like, if you look at any pro goalie, they are so good because they have the basics. Like, they're so perfect with the basics. They don't make those mistakes. They're very consistent because they do those things very well. It comes naturally to them. Skating, positioning, rebound control, all these things that make a good goalie are the important things to focus on. It's just a matter of getting better and better at them as you move up in the level of play. So that is what I would say you need to focus on in terms of being a goalie, and what you should remember, what you should think about as a goalie. The second question is habits for goalies to do every day. So first of all, I'd say you should do the same as everyone, like general health advice. So get proper sleep, eat good food. I can't tell you what that is. I'm not a nutritionist, but I think you have an idea of what food makes you feel good and what food makes you feel not as good. So being consistent with that, getting outside, getting fresh air, going for walks, being very active, getting exercise. These are basics that I would say for most people. Limiting your screen usage. Also reading and doing challenging things. So you might not think it relates, but training your mind with things like reading a book that's difficult for you, or learning a new language or a musical instrument, or doing math problems. Things like that really challenge your mind. They create and strengthen neurons in your brain, which help you learn new tasks more efficiently. They improve your reaction time. I think I've posted about that, or I will post about that soon, but there's a ton of research on that kind of stuff. So definitely think you should do things like that and challenge yourself and train everything, as I like to say. So do regular things like most people, like the advice I would give to most people, to be healthy, to live a good, healthy life. And then for goalies in particular, I would say not so much daily. You shouldn't think about it daily because you probably will need some days off. But on a weekly basis, like, do you have a plan for what you're doing that week? Are you on the ice 3-4 days a week? Do you have a plan for those sessions on the ice? Are you working out off the ice? Do you have a strength and conditioning routine? Are you working on your mobility or flexibility? So you have to have a plan in place so that you know that you're progressing. Obviously, you don't have to do this. Like, if you play hockey, just have fun and you want to enjoy yourself. You don't want to worry about this kind of stuff. You don't have to. I'm not saying that you have to, but if you're someone who's looking to improve how they play, you want to get better, you maybe want to move up another level, or you want to just play better in the league that you're in, then these are things that I would recommend. I definitely think you should do something like that. So Daily habits, what I would recommend for everybody, just healthy habits. And then things as a goalie, you want to be working on things that are important, and you want to have a plan for them. So you want to make sure that your practices are an efficient use of your time, and you're doing some off-ice workouts, some mental training, whatever it is. Make a plan, stick to that on a weekly basis. Question number 3 is how to do the splits. So I've made a post about this. I have more coming. I was working on a mobility and flexibility program. I still need to decide what I'm going to do with that, if I want to release that. But there are different ways to go about it. And if you look around, people have achieved results in a variety of ways. Some people will say you need to stretch every single day. You need to hold a stretch for like minutes at a time. I don't know if that's true. The studies I've read, what I've looked at, both the studies and both the anecdotal experience of people who have achieved the splits, you don't need to do that much stretching. I would say treat it, and this is my opinion, but I would say treat it like strength training. So you're not doing it every day. You need days to recover. If you're trying to really increase your flexibility and get to a point where you can do the splits, you want to have rest days. So I would say 2 or 3 days a week, you want to be stretching, and you want to do stretches that get you the splits. So there are different variations. You want to stretch your adductor muscles, your groin muscles. You want to probably stretch your hamstring. You want to stretch your hips. So there are a few different exercises. I would pick maybe 3, 4, 5, whatever they are, and focus on them 2 to 3 days a week, maybe 30 seconds per stretch for about 3 sets. What I've seen generally is you want about 9 minutes a week for each stretch, and then you want to just slowly progress on that. So the splits is not something you're going to get in 2 weeks. Maybe you will. I don't think you will. Most likely, most people don't get that. But you want to take your time and you want to be patient. So you don't want to think about it in terms of days or even weeks. It's probably better to think about it in months. So if you want to get into the splits and you're not close to it yet, think about it in terms of where you'll be in 6 months or where you'll be in a year. Don't think about getting the splits overnight. And the final thing I have to add is not everybody can necessarily do the splits. You have to take into account hip anatomy. Some people are going to have a much harder time getting into that position. You may not be able to get into it. The thing is, you don't know until you try. So you want to, I think as a goalie, you should definitely work on increasing your flexibility. If you run into pain, well, then you should not work through that pain. You should take it a step back. You don't need to do splits. Like, you don't need to do the splits to be a good goalie, but it definitely helps. So it's something that I would recommend, something I would recommend you work on and train. But you want to be careful. If you're getting into pain when you do these exercises, you probably need to regress, need to go slower, or maybe you need to stop working on flexibility. It's a unique situation, but in terms of how to do the splits, I think the short answer is consistency with stretching. Question number 4. So I got quite a few questions about this, and it's about positioning and angles. So there are a few things to this. The first thing I would say is you need to work with a goalie coach. That's the number one thing I would recommend. There's so much benefit from working with somebody that can actually see you on the ice, who has that experience training goalies and is working with you one-on-one or even in a small group setting. But definitely, that's my best advice for this. Get a goalie coach, someone who can help you with this. If you can't get a goalie coach, if it's not possible, get video of yourself in practice, in games. Get an idea of what you look like on the ice. It's hard to improve if you can't see what you're doing wrong. 1, get a goalie coach. Number 2, get video. Ideally, do both. That's my first tip for this. And then in terms of thinking about positioning, how we can think about it, there are a few different ways. You want to be square to the puck. So a very simple way to think about this is think about the jersey on the front, your jersey, the logo on the front of your jersey, and think about the puck. You want there to be a straight line so that the puck is right in the middle of your chest or your mask. Same thing basically, but you want to have that line straight up. So that when we talk about being square to the puck, that's what that means. So where the puck is and not where the shooter is, because they're different. The shooter could be on the left or right side of the puck, but you want to be square to the puck so it's in the middle of your chest. The second part of positioning is going to be angles. So this is harder to explain just talking about it, but think about your posts beside you and where the puck is, and you want to think about there being a triangle. So the 2 lines are here at the post, and they come up to meet at the top of the triangle wherever the puck is. And you want to be in the middle of that triangle. So angles will change depending on where the puck is. If the puck's right in the middle of the hash marks, so straight in front of you, the right angle there is going to be in the middle of the net. If the puck's off to the right, off to your right, you'll be more to the right side of the net. If the puck's to the left, same thing, right? So you want to be in the middle of where that puck is and where your posts are. So harder to explain here, but think about that triangle, get some visuals about that, that talk about that. I will try to put some up in this video when I edit it, but that's the second part of positioning, the angles. The third way I think about it is depth. So that just means how far out of the crease you're coming. This one, people have different opinions on this. Some goalies can get away with playing a little bit deeper. Typically bigger goalies, you'll see somebody like Mike Smith plays pretty deep. But I think there is an advantage to gaining that depth when you can, when the situation calls for it. So for example, if a shooter's coming down on the wing and there's a lot of pressure from your defense and they're blocking them off and there's nobody on the other team that's open to your side, you can get more depth. You can come out further because you don't have to worry about getting back to cover a pass. And when you come out further, the puck just has less room to travel. So if you're farther back in the net, the puck has more room to get height and to get past you that way. So if my glove is here and the puck's here, it can go like this, it can go over me and go to the side. If my glove is here, now I'm stopping that puck earlier in its trajectory and it's not gonna be able to find those holes in the net. So that's just a simple way to understand it. Depth is very situational dependent. So you can't always come you can't always come that far out of the net, but you have to look at the situation and see how much depth you can gain. So in terms of positioning, I think about it with those three things. There maybe are some more that I can't think about right now. Being square to the puck, getting your angle right, and getting the appropriate amount of depth. I got a question about calm breathing during games. So I talk about this a lot, and breathing is obviously fundamental. We all know that, but it can do a lot for us during games as well. So the way I think about breathing is I break it down into inhale, exhale, and pause. So you want your breathing to be as calm as possible and as quiet as possible on the inhale. So basically, an analogy I heard is when you're inhaling, you keep your lips closed, you breathe in through your nose, but you want to think that you're hiding in a room from like a monster. So think about some movie where someone's hiding out from a bad guy or a monster or like a dinosaur or whatever it is, and they don't want to be hurt. And when they breathe too loudly, then whatever that thing that's chasing them is, it can hear them. So you want to breathe as if you're in that room, and if the monster hears you breathing, it's going to get you, right? That's an easy way to think about it. So you want quiet breathing through the nose. The inhale should be as silent as possible. Then you exhale, and you want to try to exhale for twice as long as you inhale. So if you inhale for 3 seconds, you're going to want to exhale for 6 seconds. And then what you do after you exhale, after you let all the air out, you're going to pause for 1 to 2 seconds, and then you repeat with that silent inhale. So it looks like an inhale for 3 seconds. Don't tense your neck or your shoulders. Keep it as quiet as possible. Exhale for 6 seconds. Let out all the air, and then pause for 2 seconds without breathing in or out, and then repeat. This all takes some training. You might not be able to exhale for 6 seconds, but as you practice this, you'll be able to go a little bit further. So you want to just make consistent progress over time. And then one thing I'll say is exhaling, you probably have more air that you can let out than you think. So it's really a practice, like it's a form of training, learning to let out all the air, and it's probably going to take longer than you think, and it's going to feel more uncomfortable than you think at first. So you can do that during games when the puck is in the other end, between whistles. I wouldn't think about breathing when I'm playing, when I'm focusing on a puck, when the puck's in the zone. Just play the game, like I said earlier. That's all for part 1. Part 2 will be coming next week. So thank you for your questions. Leave some comments, and I will see you in the next video.